My name's John Dolph. We haven't met before, and the administrator for the Calvary Partner Network. And so each month we're doing webinars just like this with different topics. And so if you're on our email list, we sent out a calendar of events, a schedule events with the different topics. And of course, those will change kind of as the year goes on, or they might change. But those are kind of the hopeful topics that we're looking to cover throughout the year. We want to cover everything from kids ministry to just general leadership to hospitality, and everything in between. And speaking of, next month's webinar is on March 24th at 2 p.m. and it's talking about hospitality strategy. So from the second someone pulls in your parking lot, they walk through your doors, they come into your church, what are we doing to be intentional about that? And so Katie Dahl's on this call. She's going to be taking lead on that webinar. She oversees a lot of that strategy here at Calvary. And so we're going to talk about just some best practices and then have conversation around it too. So put that in your calendars, March 24th, 2 p.m. Today's webinar is leveraging VBS to grow your church. We threw around a few ideas on VBS planning early in the year so we can get ahead of it, so we can really put some thought and intentionality behind how we do VBS at our church. And so we wanted to have this conversation now. And instead of really digging in on kind of the tools and more resources specifically, we wanted to take a step back and have a conversation about how are we being strategic through it, to give a great experience, of course, for the kids, but ultimately to maybe grow our churches and to give people a really good experience when they're coming to VBS. So how are we going to be intentional about that? And as we go, if you have any questions, Julie Wilson's one of the leaders on this call, and Angie Larson, their contact information will be in the comment sections, and just feel free to reach out. There's no dumb questions. We're all trying to figure these things out together. So send an email, ask away. We're wide open to that. So Julie Wilson, she's on the call here today. She's the director of kids ministry at Good Shepherd in Moorhead, and oversees the VBS program there and the great growth over the last number of years. And Angie Larson, one of the pastors here at Calvary, oversees the VBS here at Calvary, and she does a great job behind the scenes with VBS here. So they're going to take the lead on it. So why don't you guys jump in? We'll hand it off to you guys and we can rock and roll.
Hey, everybody. It's good to see you today. It's hard to think about Vacation Bible School when there's like 1.5 feet of snow out my window here, and I only have I can only see through the top half of my window. But I think that's exactly the perfect time for us to be doing it. Here at Calvary, we try and start as early as possible. And the reason is that we want to build a buzz, and families are already planning for summer. So I am surprised I've gotten phone calls from grandparents and things like that, just asking for a save the date already when it comes to when we are going to have VBS. And so really the first thing I want to kind of address here kind of in our strategies is that in order to have an invite culture here at Calvary, we expect that VBS is not going to be for the kids that are just in our church. We're creating VBS for the kids that are not in our church. So we want to make sure that we get that message out really, really early on. And we do this through a number of strategies. So we start this early. We hit up our kids that have been there before. We ask them to go ahead and start inviting their friends. Kids are our best evangelists. Kids will invite a friend to an event far faster than an adult will invite a friend to church. So we're thankful. We're going to lean into that. So we do a lot of things like stickers in Sunday school, save the date. We do postcards, kind of like this one's for Easter, but we'll do postcards here going out to start inviting everyone right now here in February to VBS in August. So 6 months out, which sounds crazy town, right? I don't even know what I'm saying for Ash Wednesday yet, but I know that I have to make sure that people have heard about when VBS is going to be. So what we do is we really focus on things like social media. A lot of the VBS programs that you can purchase these days will have a social media availability with that program. So here at Calvary, we use Orange curriculum. It looks kind of like this. We've already ordered it. It's going to be available to you on the open network. John says he's going to upload it and have it there for you tomorrow. So if you haven't already purchased one for your congregation, hey, we bought it for you. So that is going to be up on the open network, but it comes with social media slides and other things that you can use in order to kind of promote that in your community. Posters, the newspaper, all the different ways that community kind of gets the word out. Communities, but when it comes to what works, we just start really early. Also, one other thing that we'll do is we'll start decorating the church kind of early. We're going to give the kids this idea that we're making waves before they leave. Making waves is our theme this year. And before they actually are done with education, they're going to know so much about VBS already. So we really create that invite culture to say, hey, we want you and we want you to bring a friend. This year at Calvary, we're going to try something new. But for every Calvary kid who invites a friend, they're going to get a free little gift. So they're going to get something, some little like motivation to be able to invite a friend. So when they show up with a buddy, we're going to be ready for that person. And then that kid's going to also get a little like Frisbee or something super cheap, but they're, kids love that stuff. So, so the invite culture starts early and often. We just talk about it as often as we possibly can. Julie, anything to add on that?
No, I think we'll continue to kind of touch on that. You can't talk about it enough. And John posted a link we just created, it's 10 steps, 10 little tips to hopefully help you. If you have folks that help you with VBS that you can share with them. And we're going to walk through that document today. And if you guys have, we want this also be, if you have questions, if you have, anything you want to add, just, you can always raise your hand and let us know. So that invite culture, and then that also leads into the hospitality and to think about who are the people that you want to be their welcoming people. And for a lot of people, it might be their first time back to church after COVID. Maybe it's their first time in your building at all. And maybe it's the people that you've seen hundreds of times. And so how are we welcoming all of those people? Not only the kids, but also the adults. Our biggest time is we have at closing every day, the last 30 minutes, parents and babysitters and grandparents and stuff can come in and watch the closing time. And so how are we welcoming those people at that time and having specific people that are just the greeters and welcomers during that time. And to even just in how you're telling people where to go. We can't assume that everyone knows where everything is. And so to think about, who are some of those people? There's a lot of people that don't feel comfortable being the leader of leading crafts or leading the games or whatever, but would come for the first 45 minutes and say hello and welcome people. And so get them on board now.
Yeah, here at Calvary for the hospitality, Katie Dahl had the great idea to get our men's Bible study group just high-fiving kids on their way in, just to have them have some stake in the game. Guys who would normally not want to do anything but drink coffee, eat donuts, and read the Bible on Wednesday mornings came early and just high-fived kids on their way in. 10 minutes, that was their volunteer gig. But it was really, it was good for the guys and really good for the kids too. So kind of our next one is really about creativity. I've had the privilege of serving Calvary for about 2.5 years, but prior to that, I was at a really small church in an inner city Des Moines. And that was a really different demographic. So we had to sit there and say, if we're having VBS, how do we make this look like VBS for this community? And so what I needed to do was to really figure out what the community needed and what was good for that kind of inner city area. So it was a really kind of impoverished area. And really, as I talked to families just on the street in the neighborhood, they said, you know what, we kind of would love to have dinner. We'll come for dinner and then maybe a little VBS kind of activity there too. So that looked very, very different to be able to figure out what the needs of the community were. So for that VBS, we kept it in the evenings, and it was just 5 to 7 at night. It was a very short little shift, but it was a chance for us to feed them dinner, do craft, games, Bible study, very simple. And then it was a chance for parents to be able to have 2 hours in the evening. But that meal was really the most important part for this kind of program. Another congregation in that same kind of area, they decided to partner with other congregations and have VBS at a park. So if your congregation is just a little bit smaller, maybe consider partnering up with other places. So that really is a community VBS. So the idea is that we're reaching out to those places and then share that how you invite them back to your congregation. So I think it's important to be flexible on that. And then one of the things I kind of want to think about is shifting times to meet needs. I think it's a really VBS sometimes in some places. Ours is here at Calvary. Ours is 8 to 11 and during the week, during the summer in August. But in your context, maybe this is the time to sit there and say, you know what, post-COVID, we're going to try an evening VBS. But really, it's getting to know your neighbors, the people that are not there, and trying to decide what would best fit for what they are. A couple of fun tips too, just as you're talking about creativity, would be to borrow and share decorations from other congregations. So I think a lot of churches spend a lot of energy kind of trying to figure out how to decorate their church. And you can use that money that you would normally use on decorations and put that into promotions. That way you're doing that invite culture aggressively, but then to just borrow stuff from other congregations. And you can find this a lot of times on Facebook groups to be able to see. We sent all of our decorations to a church in Fergus Falls, but we received a bunch of them from another congregation as well. So we didn't spend any energy on that. I'm not sure that that's, and I think a lot of congregations spend a lot more energy on figuring out how you're going to decorate the church than how you're going to invite the kid that's not there. So it's just about shifting that perspective so that you can use, your budgeting, your dollars, whatever that is, to make sure that you kind of go out there and make sure that kids can come. We here at Calvary, we make sure that we have a no cost VBS. We want to make sure that kids are able to come, period. That's it. We want to make sure that they're able to come and that there's nothing prohibitive. So if I don't spend money on decorations or things like that, then that's really a good thing.
Yeah, and there's lots of, I know, so Calvary is doing the Orange Making Waves. We do group, and so we're doing the Monumental, and I am in both. There's Facebook groups and Pinterest boards, and I can let it overwhelm me, and I can see this is what everyone's doing over the weekend. I don't let that. I've come to learn that decorating is not my forte, but also if you have folks that is what they love to do, there's plenty of other people. Don't reinvent the wheel. Yeah, make sure you check out what people are already doing. All right, so leadership. And I think that we all can agree that investing in our leaders will make or break really anything, but for sure VBS. And so that we are already now starting to think about who are those key leaders we want, and how are we going to invest in them. So to make sure you're communicating, I see, I think you'd be really great at doing the games. I see how you are, fun, and you can get everyone's attention, or you're super creative. Would you think of doing crafts or those hospitality pieces? I think we all the leaders will feel more inclined if they have that personal invitation. And so for us, we have grown, the youth leaders has grown a ton over the year. I think it's a lot of them have grown up in the program and are excited now to be leaders. And so we are tapping into that. And I have a fun little story. One of our leaders last year, her neighbor is like a grandpa figure to her. So he always hears stories And so he shared this story that he heard with us. And it said, my best friend, 12-year-old Kenzie, told me last week, I love to go to church. She said, she was a group leader for our 4 and 5-year-olds at Vacation Bible School. And she showed me this picture of her group hugging her and hanging on to her. That has continued throughout the summer. When she goes to church on Sunday, those kids run to her, throw their arms around her, jump up and down, laugh and scream. That's why Kenzie loves to go to church. I'm convinced that 98% of us don't come to church for more clarification on the book of Romans. We come to be loved. And that's the secret. I love to go to church if someone there shows me they love me and are happy to see me. Who wants to miss out on that? The message of nearly every Sunday is that God loves you, but God needs help. Some arms, a couple of hands, and maybe a scream or two. And so we share this actually with a lot of our greeting teams as just like, here's your why of what you're doing, is that we want to share that love and make sure others are sharing that love as well. So, yeah. And then how are you, do your leaders stand out? Do you give them a shirt or a lanyard? And to think about that is also a great way to thank them for their help, but it also helps them to stand out. And I know Angie was saying that they have shirts they wear throughout the year that now those leaders wear, they have the same shirt. And so if they continue to help, and hopefully they will stand out. We've done different colored shirts. It's helpful for our youth. Some of them, it's hard to tell if they're a VBS kid or if they're a youth helper. And so it's helpful if they have that kind of staff shirt to stand out, but it's also a great way to thank them. Think about your leadership training. If you're gonna have it in person, if it's gonna be something, I've tried many different ways. Now I have it in person. We have usually a Zoom, also do lots of one-on-ones. Ideally, it'd be great if we all could sit in the same room and talk together, but the realities of that become more difficult with everyone's full schedules. And then make sure you're checking in every day at VBS with your leaders, thanking them. I found in one of the Facebook groups, someone made these 2 images that people can share to print out. One of them was a picture of a bunch of donuts, and it says, I don't know what I would do without you. And so she said she's gonna have that printed out with donuts one morning. And the other one, it was, there's no one better than you. And it was something like that. Shoot, I should have looked it up, but it was like giving them a microwave popcorn or having popcorn for them, but just really simple little thank yous that don't cost a lot of money, can go a long way. And I love the idea of, getting those men involved, or like, are there key groups that you can ask to come? And even if it's not every day, but who can you get to come for that few minutes? A high five or a fist bump means a lot to the kids.
Yeah. I just want to talk a little bit about how we prepare for having more folks come into our VBS. So, as Julia was talking, one of the things as we lead our leaders, one of the things that we try and really encourage them, like, this is our privilege and opportunity to share the good news of Jesus Christ with our community. And so they come in with this expectation that we are trying to have as many kids as possible. A lot of times I think in churches, we sit there and say, you know what, we can probably only have 10, right? And we start to kind of panic as we have those kind of bigger numbers. Of course, I want you to hear that, like, safety matters. So we don't want to shove 500 kids into a tiny little classroom, but to start with the image that it's good for us to go ahead and expect that we're going to have a lot more people in our building than what we have originally registered. So what we do is we when we set up our groups initially with our signups, we go ahead and keep really high ratios. So like 1 to 3, 1 to 4, so that when a kid shows up with their friend or their neighbor, we're ready to go and just add them to a particular group. So we plan ahead that people are going to register sort of at the last minute. And I know that that's sometimes anxiety producing, but I think when your leaders understand the why, that we have this 1 week, this one chance to really share the gospel with kids who have maybe never heard it. then they'll start to have more space for when, that extra kid is added to their group as well. One other thing that we kind of have learned is when we do t-shirts or whatever swag we do, we just Calvary brand it instead of doing like the group t-shirts or the other, they'll all sell you a t-shirt, but honestly, I want those kids to be able to wear that shirt year round. We all have old t-shirts that say 2012 VBS, whatever. So go ahead and just, and I'm sure, this year because of the partner network, we just did a simple Calvary C and then the kids. So that way kids from other congregations came to our VBS as well. So I would lean into your own brand and not necessarily like group or orange or whatever publication that you use, Designer Van. So so we kind of lean into it in that way.
All right. So the week of VBS, which feels like a long ways away. I think we all just need to dig deep and realize it's going to be a week of, we hope, controlled chaos, but just this high energy, and just continue to make sure people, are excited and that we are safe. But how are you sharing that story every day of making sure there's someone there taking pictures and then posting them on social media or on your website, but making sure, like, if there's a little story reel or something of, it doesn't need to be hundreds and hundreds of pictures, but here's a snapshot of what happened. I know for us, like, the pictures of people or kids always get higher traction than just words. So think about during the week, and that takes time, but it's so important for them to see what is happening. We also like to send home just a few little conversation starters or just a few little words of what happened today, so that when you hear the, like, how was VBS, you might hear the, oh, it was good. But what are just a few little conversation starters that you could send home, and whether that's in the text or and seeing if there's ways to continue that conversation after they leave. So
Thanks. And then the last thing that we kind of do is we want to make sure that everything we do here at Calvary has a next step. So VBS is one of those places to kind of really leverage the fact that there's a lot of visitors, there's a lot of volunteers in your building to push them to a next step. And there's a couple of ways that I think are really helpful to do that. One, like Julie mentioned, is just to go ahead and invite parents into the closing just about as often as you can, but then be strategic. Have some volunteers that their job is to greet and host and like schmooze them a little bit, right? So they're there to sit there and just chat up those people, because some of them have never been in the church before. They just saw this opportunity to get rid of their kids for a couple of hours. And so we want to make sure that we're greeting them and loving on them and getting to know them during those windows of time. One thing that I found helpful, and we've done here at Calvary, and I've done at other congregations, to have some kind of event on the last day of VBS. So things like we invited everyone to come outside because of COVID, and so we did kind of a big music time outside, invited the parents to come in. Then we kind of went through what we had learned, but then also we talked about what else was happening in the church, and we give them very simple, tangible ways to get involved. Like number one, we want your kids to come to worship on Sunday and sing one of our VBS songs. A lot of those kids, that's their first time coming to worship. Number two, we have this service project opportunity for you to get involved in. Or number three, register for our fall programming. So we have those kind of ready to go in all of our communication, so that VBS isn't the end game of this. It's just that they take all that energy and excitement for VBS, and then they're able to push it into their regular life. And so we're really intentional of making sure that those next steps can happen. And so and we get creative, but I wouldn't give them too many options on what to do next. I just give them one or two or three, and then just really make it simple. Parents say, great, now we can do this next great thing.
Yeah. So we have a couple last minute points, but should we just see if there's now some time? I would love to hear from you guys. Just are there roadblocks, or are there things that have been frustrating for you? I will admit, I mean, I don't have all the answers, but I love VBS, and I think it's a powerful week for families, and would love to help you guys troubleshoot if there are some roadblocks, or what are your hopes for your programs too.
Crickets. So, hey, maybe can you just tell us the size of your congregation and kind of maybe introduce us a little bit to kind of what your context is, and then help me to see if we can, what we can get creative on. I don't know. Nathan, would you want to jump in? Would you mind?
Yeah, so we're at Elk River Lutheran in Elk River, Minnesota, and you know, when you asked the question, that's kind of what came to my mind. Actually, was size, that we're quite a bit smaller, and so our VBS programs here have always been, you know, on the smaller side, and so it's kind of a little bit different experience. Like I mean, like I would anticipate like VBS. Well, last year was kind of a weird year, but
Yeah.
you know, even in the biggest years, it was probably less than 30 kids, and so it's a different program. So most recently, we've done an evening program that did include a meal and stuff, because we also are a commuter community for the most part, or at least used to be, with a lot of parents commuting and stuff. So that's
Yeah.
a little bit.
Were you able to get more parents involved by doing it kind of in the evening? Was that a helpful?
You know, certainly this last year, I think
This
most
last year was
parents
tough.
just, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I would say most, if not all, the parents stuck around, and, you know, some were active participating through the whole thing. Others were just kind of visiting with each other and stuff. And so that part was good.
Yeah, no, that's really good. So
I've heard of people that have not done it in a consecutive week too, of like maybe it's every Wednesday night or for 4 weeks or throughout a month, but thinking of being creative of other times, because I think like being in the cities too, like that commuting, and my daughter tried an evening VBS this last summer, and she got exhausted. Like we didn't realize how tiring it would be in the evening, with bedtimes and whatnot. So yeah, so maybe being creative and thinking about offering it not just within a whole week, but stretching it out longer than that.
I think one of our hurdles, and we are smaller, but one of our hurdles is we collaborate. And so like hearing a lot of what you're, you know, I mean, what I'm hearing is treated a lot like you treat your Sunday morning, and that outlandish welcome is a shift we've been trying to make. We're trying to shift away from our welcome being the 94-year-old sitting on the bench 20 feet away from the door, who just looks like a tired 94-year-old. You don't know that she's wanting to greet you. And she's wonderful. And so knowing that that's a shift we want to make with our Sunday mornings, and had that, and we tried it. We have one family on Christmas Eve was like, yeah, we can be outside greeting people. Like, that's not difficult. And you know what, why don't we take the first Sunday of every month? But otherwise that shift hasn't happened yet. So there isn't that launch point to say, okay, now we want you, now that greeting you get on Sunday morning, we want that when kids come to VBS. Never mind that we're sharing with now possibly 3 other churches in town. And one of the hurdles is a little bit, I think, of my own selfishness, not knowing who's new and not knowing who is from one of the other 3 churches, and not knowing who's a friend of one of our kids or a friend of one of the other 3 churches, and not knowing Eau Claire is not an 8 ELCA church town, yet we have 8 ELCA churches.
sure.
And so, and I can logically drive by all but one of them on my way from home to church. And so, you know, there aren't territorial, you know, it's not schools, there aren't territorial boundaries. But it's not just trying to shift our people. if it was our
Sure.
people doing it in our church for our kids, it would be shifting our mentality
Mhm.
instead of going in like gangbusters to talk with potentially three other, two for sure, maybe a third, saying we're going to do it differently. When we all have our ways that work. And I'm glad that we're collaborating. All of our numbers are just at Good Shepherd. All of our numbers are really third grade and below, fourth grade a little bit. And so a lot of our numbers aren't even VBS age. And so eventually we might have them like, hey, you know, we might need to do this on our own because we have all these kids. But right now it's sharing those things and shifting the mentality of three other places and groups of volunteers is I think.
Yeah, how do you help these other congregations get this community-wide perspective? It is hard. A lot of times I think when we're just trying to get it done, we're just trying to sort of get it done for ourselves, right? And so to shift to kind of an let's invite the whole community of Eau Claire to our VBS and not just our kids. That's a paradigm shift for sure.
Right.
When we did this at Lutheran Memorial, the small congregation I just came from, to a community-wide VBS, I remember I got a volunteer and she was like 90, 89, right? And she said to me afterwards, she said, Angie, these kids have no idea how to be in church. And I said, yeah, because they've never been in church. And so it really changed how everything, I mean, that was the inner city. We were dealing with swearing and, like all kinds of stuff, but it's because these kids had never experienced kind of the love and grace of God and people that wholeheartedly, and it was hard. I'll be honest. It was really hard for this woman to sit there and say, this is not how we behave in church. And so it's trying to help people catch that vision of why we're going out to include kids that are not in our congregation. That's tricky, especially when you're collaborating. That's a really hard thing to do. But it's brave and it's bold. So that's exciting. And, pull them onto one of these partner network conversations. We'll talk to them. So.
Well, and I think of like the too many cooks in the kitchen of like, there's maybe too many ideas, like too many people have their different ideas, which can be hard too. And so even thinking of like, so if it is this welcoming hospitality piece, is it, one of your congregations is going to take that on. And so it's not so many people doing a little bit, but you're doing a bigger chunk of that. Yeah.
That's actually a really good idea. You can have one congregation be responsible for welcoming and hospitality, and then another congregation in charge of crafts. Like maybe you can steer your ship a little bit. That's actually a good strategy.
Do you guys do a curriculum, Josh, or do you do your own thing? Okay.
Yes, we do.
Okay.
But I'm grateful to have Anne, who is our representative at those meetings.
Great.
But yeah, on that one, we kind of, we do rotate who hosts. And we were supposed to be the year that was completely canceled because of COVID. Mm-hmm. And then we were the bounce back year. And I wish we were this year. And I would put my foot down and say, listen, we're doing this thing. We're going to use this curriculum. And we are going to be the outlandish hosts. But we're not the hosts. And we're going to play nice in somebody else's sandbox.
But we also bring counselors from camp to help with programming.
Yeah, so we have a Bible, well, Alexandria, Calvary does as well, have a Bible camp in the area, but we have a partnership, and that, for especially being like finding those volunteers has been like pulling teeth, and wanting to have that good relationship. Like it makes sense to have Luther Park Bible Camp bring their counselors and do the program, much of the program. Yep.
And you think about the strategies that Bible camps use are similar to kind of what we're talking about. You pull in the driveway and those Bible camp counselors are like packing on your windows, telling your kid that this is going to be the best week of their whole lives. So I leverage that a little bit if you have the opportunity, just sit there and say, all right, Bible camp leaders, like, you're good at this at camp, we need you to be good at this here. Right. We want to welcome these kids, and then have some strategy, like if you're doing this together, here are 3 different worship options that you and your family can have, or 3, go to this church, or this church. We don't care which one, but we want you to be engaged in the life of faith, because we think that that's important. There are some ways that you might be able to do it in that way. Yeah, I'd leverage those Bible camp counselors as awesome greeters. So, other questions?
Are there any other questions? I had one, and I can't even take claim to this because I stole it from another church, but we did this during when we did at-home VBS boxes, and I had a few of our homebound members send a handwritten note to all of the kids that were registered, and said that they were praying for them, and it was so powerful. And so just a way to get, again, other folks involved. And if you don't know who's going to be there till they show up that morning, that's tricky. But even if throughout the week you're collecting those names, and afterwards you have people just praying individually for those households, I think that's a really a powerful tool, and is a way to include more of your congregation. And I wish I would have thought of that idea myself.
That's all right. It's a good one. And one other thing that I think is really great, when you have your kids register, have them sign a photo release and just plaster their photos just everywhere. Kids love looking at themselves. Right? They feel like celebrities when they're on Facebook. And so, we are lucky enough to have some people who take really great pictures. iPhones just are magical at this point. And so we just do little collages every single day to try, and little videos, collages that just want to remind parents what a great time their kids are having, and why this church thing is really important. And so kids, they just want to see pictures of themselves. And I love that about kids. So, but just great ways. And then we're using those same photos from last year just now to try and promote Save the Date VBS this year. So. Well, I think on behalf of Julie and myself, if you have questions or you're meeting with your VBS team, I know I'd be happy to Zoom with your group to try and help communicate some of these strategies. Sometimes it's helpful to have kind of an outside person come in and say, hey, this is what we have found is really helpful. Sometimes that's helped with the teams that I have worked with. And so we're honored and happy to do that for you and your VBS teams, or just a phone call with maybe whoever your chairperson is, just kind of help with some of those strategies. I think Julie and I would both be open to those kind of things. So.
Yeah. And I just, again, want to encourage you all that your context is your context. And we all, Angie and I have worked in different churches. I worked in led VBS in the Upper West Side of Manhattan. Very different than Fargo Moorhead. Like, I was telling Angie the other day, like, the kids left by themselves on the subway. Like, it was the most terrifying thing, but that's all they knew. And like, so every context is different. And to give yourself the grace that you need, and to know it's easy to want to compare and wish that it was something else or something bigger. But I think little by little, hopefully you got some tools today to put in your toolbox that will help you guys. And again, we're here and praying for your ministries, as we know that many of you, this isn't, VBS is one of many things that is on your plate for the summer. So.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys. Hans, did you have anything you wanted to jump in? before I have some closing comments here?
No, great conversation, you guys. Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Angie. And next month, we're going to have another conversation, which super excited about hospitality. How do we do some of the things we do for Vacation Bible School, but do it on a weekly basis? How is it that we open the doors really wide and roll out the red carpet for people in really easy ways every week? So excited about that conversation.
I will be in Hawaii for
Absolutely.
the next one, but we'll try to get some leaders that would be a part of that hospitality shift anyways.
I think Zoom works in Hawaii, doesn't it?
I love it.
Awesome.
Fantastic.
Well,
I
hey,
didn't
before
intend to hike, but I might just be hiking that hour.
Yeah, now you're gloating. So good to see you all, and thanks for tuning in. And again, if you guys have any questions, any needs, any ways that the partner network can support you, oh, look at that little one. Everybody wave. Let us know.
Hi.
Let us know. Hi.
one last thing here before we hop off to, if you haven't already, go to the calvarypartners.org, the website, and make sure way on the bottom here, there is a sign up for emails. Make sure that you sign up there, because we put out the different events that are coming up. You can forward those on to your team members. When they're specific to a certain staff person, forward it along to them. They can just sign up for these emails too, and we'll make sure that you're on the partner list to get specific dates and times and things like that. And if you haven't already, make sure you create your open network account. We're putting all of our worship series on there, kids ministry resources, VBS curriculum. There's social media resources and tools, like posts that are just ready to go. You can just go on this site, get on our Dropbox account that's linked on that site, and just have images ready to go for your social media. And then we're putting out training videos every month as well. So make sure that you're checking there and subscribe on YouTube, where we have all of our training videos as well. So awesome. Thank you guys for being on the call today, and spread the word about the next one's coming up, and reach out to us with any questions you have. We are just better together. We appreciate you guys.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
All right,
Bye, Jeremy. Bye, Ann.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Josh. Nathan.